excuse for violence and intimidation. It comes shortly after Merseyside police arrested 15 people aged between 13 and 54 following the violent protests. Security has been increased following the incident, with reinforced fencing and a police presence. The UN aid chief, Martin Griffiths, has warned the death toll in Turkey and Syria from Monday's earthquakes could double. His comments come as the number of dead in southern Turkey and northern Syria nears 26,000. Despite the conditions, rescuers have continued to find some survivors in the rubble, but they say the window is closing. Mr. Griffiths says the UN will carry out separate aid appeals for Turkey and Syria in the coming days. The Disasters Emergency Committee has raised more than £50 million of aid and support for victims of the earthquakes in 2 days. Rabina Saeed from Frontline Medical Aid charity UK Med says more are joining in the humanitarian efforts.
Ground are going to be providing a full Type 1 hospital facility, so that is providing primary health care to those who need it. So that's dealing with initial kind of trauma incidents, but then also secondary illnesses and diseases, people that might have left their homes without their medicine, families and children, so providing that primary medical support.
A man has died and a second remains in hospital following a double stabbing in East London. Officers were called to Hackney Wick at 4:30 this morning when the victims, both in their 20s, arrived at hospital with knife wounds. A 26-year-old later died from his injuries. Forensic teams are searching the White Post Lane area where the incident took place, and so far no arrests have been made. Well, an arrest has been made following a protest at a drag queen storytelling event for children at London's Tate Britain. Police say the person in custody is suspected of making a racially aggravated comment towards a police officer. The protest broke out after demonstrators, described by some as far-right, clashed with others who'd gathered in support of the event. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
My thanks to Tatiana, who returns in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. After GB News' exclusive documentary on the exploitation of girls up and down the country, our big question is a simple one. Have lessons been learned from the grooming gangs scandal? In my big opinion, in just a moment, I'll tell you why Mick Lynch and the RMT are taking the mick when it comes to refusing that final and generous offer from the government, 9%. And in the news agenda, after complaints they're ignoring pedestrian crossings, are cyclists now out of control? Also, for a bit of fun later, is it wrong to eat food in bed? Do you do that? And are you ever too old to party? Plus, we've got tomorrow's papers at the earlier time of 10:20 right through until 11 tonight, in the company of the Daily Express Online's political editor, the wonderful David Maddox. Don't worry, that's not David Maddox. Don't panic. He hasn't had a sex change. That is Kinsey Schofield. Yes, later in the show, we're going to America for the Queen of US royal showbiz and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Reacting to the big stories of the day and tomorrow's papers, the Sunday papers, are my fantastic panel of political commentator Tonya Buxton, the journalist and model Diana Moran, and Olympian and broadcaster Chris Akabusi. Now, I want to hear from you throughout the show, Mark at gbnews.uk. And this show has a golden rule. We don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. So for the next 2 hours, big debates, big guests, and always big opinions. Let's start with this one. Mick Lynch is taking the mick. The RMT rail union boss has turned down an incredible 9% offer from the government. Wouldn't you and I bite your hand off for that kind of raise? Well, it's not good enough for the rail unions, who would seek further damage to our economy and further disruption to the lives of hard-working Brits, than accept this generous offer. Now, let's be honest, Mick Lynch is just doing his job and speaking up for his members. He does it very well. But all may not be as it seems. With the Telegraph reporting today, But it's just possible Mick Lynch wants to accept the deal, with his deputies having already drafted an agreement on this latest offer. But the paper claims that he's been barred from accepting the deal by a hardcore rump of old-school unionist campaigners in his ranks. An internal memo seen by The Telegraph reveals Lynch is under pressure from roughly 450 branch leaders to reject the deal. Why so? Why isn't 9% good enough? Well, these activists have allegedly ordered Mr. Lynch to push for, wait for it, the suppression of the capitalist system by a socialistic order of society. This supports the theory of many that this industrial action is motivated by more than just seeking a fair deal for their workers, and that there is a wider political aim, not just to bring down the government, but to bring down capitalism altogether. So yielding to the unions and their inflation-busting demands risks not only further adding to the national debt and baking inflation into the system for years to come, it risks the debasing of our economic system altogether. They want to bring down capitalism. Now, this industrial action is a massive headache for Rishi Sunak, as the strikes are politically and economically expensive. But it's an opportunity too. It's his chance to show his mettle and to stand up for the principles of a free capitalist society, to stand up for the taxpayer, and to stand up for Britain's national economic interest. Yield to these unions' unreasonable demands, and every other union you can think of will follow. Now, the rail unions argue that their workers have had real terms pay cuts for many years and that their members are struggling. They point to fat cat salaries in the city, which grow exponentially. They're not wrong. And they say that many of the aims they have are not financial, but are based around job security, working conditions, the safety of their members and the safety of the public. But the reason why the government are looking to get rid of ticket offices and change work patterns is to capitalise on technology and automation and to plug a horrendous gap in what is a gaping hole in the business model of rail. As thousands more people discovered during the pandemic, they could work just as well from home, which means revenue is down and will never get back to where it was. Plus, Mick Lynch and his lynch mob have short memories, as the government supported the rail industry during lockdowns to the tune of £600 per household in this country. And now 9% is not enough for them. With this decision to reject a generous pay offer, one millions in the private sector would love to have, Mick Lynch and the RMT union have finally gone off the rails. What a train wreck. What's your view? Mark at gbnews.uk. Let's get reaction from my all-star panel. Tonight, Tonya Buxton, who is a political commentator, model and journalist Diana Moran, and Olympian and broadcaster Chris Akabusi. Let me start with you, Tonya. What's your reaction to the RMT union refusing a pay rise of 9%, which is more or less where we are with inflation?
It's pretty obscene, isn't it? They're just being greedy, and it's not about the money anymore. It's about bringing down the government and their political aims. And I coming from the hospitality industry where I work with, I saw so many small companies break down, close down. They've never come again, whereas the rail unions got supported during the obscene lockdowns that we were put through. So instead of being grateful for that and moving on, they're just grabbing and grabbing more and more. It is obscene.
Indeed. Well, look, I wonder now, Chris Akabusi, whether the rail unions have lost public support, if they hadn't already.
I don't know about that. It's really in agreement. We wondered whether we were going to have a disagreement. I'm already going to disagree with Tonya there.
That's what we love on this show.
Because do you remember the refrain, build back better, through the COVID pandemic?
It's one of Tonya's favourite catchphrases, isn't it, Tonya?
Sinister, that's what it is.
Thank you very much.
Tonya loves a bit of globalism.
And the term we will own nothing and be happy. I suspect that the Mick Lynch and his boys are actually fighting against that, because this, you mentioned in your monologue, modernisation, automation and capitalising on all of that good stuff. I think that what they're actually rejecting is the terms and conditions that will come along with the 9%. So we've not got privy to the minutiae of those terms and conditions. But what we do know is that they want driver-operated only vehicles. What we do know is that they don't want to have the person that goes behind the window, the cashier. So basically, driving out the human element. Well, if it happens here, your job will be next. And so I suspect that what we're seeing is one sector of the community fighting against the Build Back Better mantra. And if you've been in business for 40 odd years, and I accept, that, sometimes there are too many people and it's got to be reduced for efficiency measures, but let's be careful. Let's be careful for what we're wishing for, because already if you go into retail shops, you see how the auto checkout has reduced the amount of women. Sorry about that. The amount of people
Careful,
checkouts.
Chris.
Yeah.
You're sandwiched between two alpha females.
Exactly. But yes, exactly. But, we are flushing out humanity from the reality of the workplace. And I think that's what they might be fighting against as well, at least.
There you go. Brave man is our Chris Akabusi. He might be an Olympian, but he's never taken on Tonya Buxton and Diana Moran at the same time. Diana Moran, the RMT union would argue that their workers that they represent are struggling. They're going through financial hell. What's your view?
Well, my view is that other people are going through financial hell as well, possibly caused by these people not doing their job. I mean, how many people do we know who live out in the suburbs of one of the large cities here in the UK who cannot get to work, want to go to work, and if they try to go to work, can't get there on time or can't guarantee that they're going to come back again? And then if you take the work out of it, other people still want to move around the country, perhaps to go and visit family, friends, perhaps there's been a death in a family or ill health. And again, if they're not car users, they're trying to use the rail and then they get stuck somewhere. I think it's terrible. We're in a dreadful, dreadful mess.
There you go. Well, look, I think you'll agree we're travelling business class with my panel tonight. They're with me all evening, reacting to tomorrow's Sunday papers, reacting to my take at 10 in just 45 minutes' time. But lots to get through before 10 o'clock in the news agenda, with reports that they're ignoring the highway code, ignoring pedestrian crossings. Are cyclists now out of control? But next, in the big question, have we learnt the lessons from grooming gangs? Now, you'll have just seen, or you may have seen, that very powerful documentary by Charlie Peters about the scale of crime, the scale of horrors that we've seen with the grooming gangs. We'll discuss that next with Charlie Peters and the retired police officer that was a heroic whistleblower. Grooming gangs, we'll debate that next.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GBNews. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one.
Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like
Absolutely.
on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'll get to your emails shortly, but it's time now for this. Yes, it's time now for the big question. Tonight we're following up that stunning and devastating GB News investigation into the grooming gangs scandal, which saw thousands of vulnerable young women exploited, sexually assaulted and abused by gangs across the country. So, have the lessons of these appalling crimes been learned? To discuss this, I'm delighted to welcome Charlie Peters, who made the film for GB News, and former Greater Manchester Police Detective and grooming gangs whistleblower Maggie Oliver. A privilege to have both of you on the show. Charlie, can I start with you, congratulate you on an important film. Why did you make it?
I made this film because we've never had a national conversation about this issue. When the lid blew off this scandal a decade ago, our response was very mealy-mouthed. We dealt with it full of political correctness, I felt, and I was rather stunned, 10 years on, that survivors were not being heard. The responses that we needed to see from government, police, the media, the law, social services, everyone, I felt was lacking. I thought the only way to really turn this around was to try again with some fresh thinking, some fresh analysis, and to ensure people knew that this crisis is still going on today.
Absolutely. I'll come to Maggie in just a moment. I think you've got some key statistics about the scale of these crimes and the fact that they are ongoing.
Well, in a GB News exclusive tonight, we've taken from the Maggie Oliver Foundation their most recent review of the vital and necessary work they are doing. The average age for the start of abuse that of survivors they encounter is just 12 years old. We've also found...
That's not the starting age, that's the average age.
Yeah.
Shocking.
And we've also found that there are currently more than 50 live or ongoing cases that the Maggie Oliver Foundation is supporting. I have to stress, this is just one charity covering the national picture. The real figure is likely much higher. We also found that the Maggie Oliver Foundation is dealing with more than 500 survivors being supported in last year alone. And finally, since 2020, more than 1,000 survivors of child sexual abuse and exploitation have come to the Foundation for support since 2020. Now, these are extraordinary figures, and clearly it shows the lessons of the past have not been learned, and survivors are still seeking support, from legal support to emotional support. And I think we're very, very lucky to have someone like Maggie joining us to deal with this today.
Well, we are, and Maggie, I'm humbled to have you on the show. You've been such an important voice for the victims, and helping them pursue justice and lock up the evil criminals that committed these crimes. Maggie, those figures we've just heard, that's the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? We'll never have a full sense of the scale of what's happened.
We won't, Mark, but every one of those numbers is a life destroyed. I think Charlie's done an amazing job, actually, Charlie, with that documentary. I think you've pulled together a lot of the information that was needed. I set up the Maggie Oliver Foundation about 3 years ago because the authorities were not, and still are not, dealing with this crime properly. They were not gathering the statistics. They weren't gathering the information. I have now gathered a really good team around me. We've built our own system, and we are collecting the evidence that the government and the politicians don't want people to know. And, you know, Charlie's referred to the fact that racism has been linked to this kind of crime. But for me, this is about child protection. And if we don't face this head on, the losers in every case is child or a young woman who has their whole life destroyed. And, you know, 55% of the cases on our system since 2020 have got an element of sexual exploitation to them. And the victims who come to us only come to us because they have been failed and are being dismissed by the police and the authorities when they go to them in desperation for help. Many of them are being criminalised. They are being blamed still for their own abuse and pushed away. And I am not blaming individual police officers. There are good and bad in every profession. And yes, there are some poor police officers, but there are some very good ones. But the solution to ending this horrendous abuse has to come from the top. And by the top, I mean the government and chief constables and those in positions of authority. They know what is going on. It is a very time-consuming, expensive and resource-intensive investigation to prosecute these gangs because they are now so sophisticated, they are so experienced in picking out vulnerability in their victims. And those victims who are selected find themselves lacking, and even when they go to the police, there is very little appetite to investigate these crimes. They are not protected efficiently, and the gangs use increasingly sophisticated means of threatening these children. You know, on Snapchat and on messaging, they take photographs of them because, as Charlie's highlighted, you know, it still is they befriend them, they become a boyfriend, they think they're in a relationship. Often one of these children will send photographs to their abuser. That photograph then becomes a means of threatening and blackmailing and frightening those children. Because, you know, we had a case recently of a little girl of 11 who had sent photographs to her boyfriend. He then threatened to send them to her parents. Her father contacted the police. Police officers turned up into the home address, walked straight up to this little girl who was mortified and basically said to her, look, do you know that you have committed criminal offences by sending those photographs on your phone? But if you don't say anything more about it, delete your messages, delete your computer, we won't do anything else about it. And the father rightly came to the foundation in absolute disgust because behind that man threatening that girl is another gang, and there will be many, many other victims. And the police need to act when they are faced with information like that, and far too often they don't. And I would like to just say, Mark, that if there are any victims or survivors listening now who feel that they are on their own throughout the whole country, we are a small national charity. Come to us and we will help you be heard. And we have had success. Obviously, I resigned about Rochdale, but I worked on Augusta. And we have recently supported, I think it's 7 victims in Hull, where Hull police had closed down that investigation, saying there was insufficient evidence to do anything. We supported them, advocated for them, and almost a year and a half later, that case has now been reopened. So things can be done, but it shouldn't need an organisation like us to fight for them. It just fills me with horror, Mark, still. It's taken over my life, but but I'm not on my own now. I have a wonderful team at the foundation, and we are doing some amazing work in helping these young women put their lives back together. We listen to them. We don't judge them. We communicate. We treat them with empathy, with kindness. And it isn't always about a prosecution, because as a former police officer, I know it is impossible to prosecute every man who rapes a child. If the evidence isn't there, it doesn't go to court. But the way that woman or young man is treated by the system will impact on their life for the rest of their life. But with the right care and the right treatment and the right conversations, that victim can recover, and we are helping them to recover.
Indeed, I'll ask producer Stephen to give me the details of your organisation, your foundation, before we conclude this conversation. Charlie, was this a case, in terms of the police and local authorities, was it a case of cover-up, was it incompetence or denial?
Well, we still don't know the full picture. No, we went to several towns as we conducted this year-long investigation. But through our reporting and investigation across the country, we found up to 50 different towns and cities, as shown by a map during the documentary, where there have been credible allegations of grooming gangs. Now, in several of those towns, it's clear that cover-ups did happen. But a lot of the time, it was ignorance and incompetence that also ruled the way. As Maggie has pointed out, oftentimes there are good police officers and there are bad police officers, but they're also just people who aren't capable of doing their job, and they need additional support, they need training, and they need guidance. The reason why the national response to this crisis is so absolutely vital is because we need new powers to give to the good police officers so they can carry out the appropriate job. And we also need to empower those in local authorities to have mandatory reporting, so that when people hear about cases of CSA or CSE, they are required to report it. Because all too often, as we found in many of these historic cases, many of these most shocking scandals, people heard about abuse, did not pass it on. They did not take actions. Indeed, GBNews Investigates has uncovered several instances in the last 2 months where people who failed in that most vital duty are still working in the public sector today. So that is absolutely vital. Accountability must also be delivered. So if you do fail so extremely at this level in the government or in the police or in law, you should not continue that role. You should not work in the public sector again. In many ways, you should be ostracised for this gross failure. But unfortunately, as we found, that is often not the case.
Finally, Maggie, can I ask you a simple question? Has justice been done?
Not until every one of these abusers is in prison. And what I would like to say, Mark, before I finish, is a very quick point, that we are trying to build relationships with police forces. We are actually the best friend of the police, because we are not the investigators, but we are taking these cases to the police when we feel that there is a case to answer and a victim has been fobbed off. But we are a small national charity. We rely on public funding. We are not a national institution. And you know what? We don't want money from the police or the government, because I want to retain our independent voice to call out these failures where they occur. And if somebody gives us money in exchange for silence, it would never work. This is about the truth. It is about sharing the victims' voices. They tell us their stories and we fight on their behalf. We advocate for them. They are not on their own, and we will not go away until every single victim who reports a rape is prosecuted where the evidence exists. And if the evidence doesn't exist, they must be treated humanely, with decency, with compassion, with care, and they should be protected. And I know I sound emotional, but that's because I am.
Maggie, in giving those victims a voice, you have been truly heroic. I want to thank you for joining us on the programme. I want to thank you for the work you've done, and also I want to congratulate Charlie Peters for a very important film, a GBNews documentary. So thanks to Charlie Peters, thanks to former Greater Manchester Police Detective Constable and Rochdale child abuse whistleblower Maggie Oliver. If you'd like to contact Maggie's organisation, or if you can spare £1 or two, I'm certainly going to be sharing a few shillings with that great organisation when I get off air. It's the Maggie Oliver Foundation.com, the Maggie Oliver Foundation.com. Great work they do. Now, this GB News exclusive documentary, Grooming Gangs, Britain's Shame, is available to watch right now on the GB News YouTube channel. And of course, you'll be able to catch it on the app as well. Lots to get through between now and 11. We've got the papers 10 minutes earlier than everyone else at 10:20, right through until 11, in the company of the political editor online of the Daily Express, David Maddox. But next up, with reports that they're ignoring the highway code and ignoring pedestrian crossings, are cyclists out of control? See you shortly.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank. My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back to the show. Lots to get through in the next hour and a half. Reacting to the big stories of the day, my all-star panel, the political commentator Tonya Buxton, the journalist and model Diana Moran, and the Olympian and broadcaster Chris Akabusi. Simple question next up. Are cyclists out of control? It's a question that's come up after footage showed a number of cyclists almost hitting pedestrians on a zebra crossing in London. GB News viewers here who are watching can see a video of people riding bikes and e-scooters and not stopping for people who are using a pedestrian crossing. Just flying along. That's pretty hazardous, isn't it? That's a hair-raising spectacle. Oblivious to the highway code. Now, the National Federation of the Blind, who tweeted the footage, says the time has come for the government to take real action to stop blind road users being discriminated against and to start tackling the real issue, which is protecting pedestrians from reckless riders. But I think this goes beyond people with sight issues. I wonder whether cyclists are generally out of control. I mean, I've almost been hit many times by cyclists and people on e-scooters. Let's get the view of my panel. Diana Moran, what do you think about this? What do you think about that footage we've just seen?
It's quite terrifying. It really, really is. I have had a bike all my life and until just a few years ago was using it quite regularly. Now I'm terrified to go out because of all these other new rules, new regulations. And when you see cyclists now, they are cutting lights, they are going up onto the pavements. Where I live, we've got lovely towpaths by the river. They're whizzing along towpaths, you know, despite elderly people and mums with little prams that are going along.
Try walking alongside a canal. You take your life into your own hands.
It's a very similar, It's very frightening. And it frightens me because if there is an accident, they don't have insurance like we all have with our cars.
Yeah. Indeed. What do you think about this, Chris? Is this an etiquette issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think Diane's covered a lot of the points, but it can get scary in as much as if you hit a cyclist, you're going to be deemed as a driver to be in
You're the bad guy.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think the cyclists don't understand that you can be out of view, weave behind me, and in my blind spot, I've just not seen you. Not because I've looked down the road, but then you were this side, and you've cut behind me, and then you come that side. So often, you get undercut, you get this weaving, you get, like Diane said, jumping the lights. I'm ready to go, you just jump the lights. So it can be terrifying because you do know that if you hit a cyclist, human being hitting a moving vehicle isn't going to come off very well. And even if you are acquitted, the trauma of hitting somebody on a bike, well, I don't fancy it. So in that respect, it can be terrifying. And, you know, one of the things you do laugh at, in London, for example, and I'm sure it's around other cities, you've got this 20-mile-per-hour speed limits. Well, you try to adhere to it in a car, and then someone on a cycle, the cyclist comes flying past you, you know.
Well, that's right. Some of these e-bikes can hit 20, 25 miles an hour, Tonya.
Can I just say in the defence of cyclists, because my husband is one of those men in Lycra.
Is he really? Lucky you.
Yeah.
Has he got the body to pull it off?
He really does.
He does. You know why? That's all your great Greek cooking.
I think it might be. But so there are good cyclists and there are bad cyclists. The ones that I'm most worried about are the people on scooters. And it's, like you said, it's the electric bikes as well, that they just go so fast.
And they have torque, so it's instant power, isn't it?
Yeah, it's instant power, and they can do a lot of power, and they can do a lot of damage. So I do think that we need to get measures in hand. And looking at that footage that you were just looking at, everyone just going over the zebra crossing, that's got to stop. Something's got to be done. They've got to be punished for that.
Well, have we love-bombed cyclists too much? Has it gone the other way now, where cyclists feel entitled, like they're saving the planet, they can do what the hell they like?
Well, you've got to make your mind up, though, in the sense that you're either... They're trying to stop us from driving. I'll never stop driving. I love driving my car. And then they're not... Then they've got to have areas that are safe for cyclists. And cyclists, to a certain extent, it's a quandary. They've gone too far.
What makes me so cross at the moment, I live just outside of one of the big cities, and you get these people, girls and boys all together, a crowd of them. And now they're going to have a good morning of cycling. Right. And then they all stick together on the country roads. Yes. You get behind them, and quite honestly, 5 miles on, you're still behind them.
Yeah.
And you're forced to do about
changed,
10 or 12
And I think the highway code favours those cyclists
them, that's wrong.
now. And as a courtesy, certainly I find if I'm on a bicycle, I will give way to a car so they can pass. Partly because I don't want a 4x4, you know, that close to my rear end. But do you think also that this idea that we deify, we sanctify cyclists now, that, you know, they're sort of couscous-munching planet saviours and they can do no wrong?
Well,
they're entitled.
To a degree, I feel that, because obviously my business has been keep fit and, you know, helping Britain get fit and all the rest of it. And so I was thrilled when more people were cycling, but now it's gone to the other extreme. And now they seem to want to be in control of the roads, and a lot of them are a blooming menace.
Yeah, well, I tend to agree. Listen, there are plenty of people watching who do cycle to work and back. I've got colleagues that do that. They would argue that they are actually saving the planet because, of course, there's no emissions from a bicycle. It's free and it is good for your health. But I just think culturally some cyclists need to be a little more respectful of pedestrians. And that's why I've made this video. This is me in action, near the office, with a helmet, with a high vis. Look at that. I mean, that's a masterclass. Diana, can I ask for your sort of professional feedback? Oh, I nearly ran that lady over.
Well, at least you're kitted up. You've got the helmet.
Yeah.
And you're not going at a high speed.
That's exactly right. But that's because I'm unfit.
And you are fit.
So, Chris, listen, you're
I'm laughing at your sign language,
Chris, your body's a temple. You're an accomplished athlete. What do you make of my physical efforts here?
Oh, mate, you are on the way. I tell you what, where's the Olympics? I think it's Paris, isn't it? Yeah. I'm expecting you to turn up at Paris at the Velodrome.
Bradley Wiggins, yard out. There you go. Well done to Maria Mescana and Rebecca for making that video and taking their lives into their own hands, filming me on an e-bike. Fantastic stuff. Lots more to get through. Oh, by the way, let me do the Twitter poll. We put out on Twitter whether you think that cyclists are now out of control. Pretty conclusive. 73.6% say yes, whilst 26.4% say no. Many thanks to everyone that voted on that. Just briefly, Tonya, what about the idea of cyclists paying a road tax or getting 3 points on a cycling licence if they jump the lights?
Look, I don't know, because they're not wearing out the roads in the same way, but I do think they have to be, I don't know about points on licence, but they need to be punishable if they break the law and they cause people to hurt themselves.
So if for example, if a cyclist jumps the lights, what would the penalty be?
You know what, a clever cyclist, a good cyclist who jumps the lights in a clever way is just getting themselves out of harm's way and getting off before the traffic gets off. So it depends on how competent they are.
You'd make a good QC, you know that. Very good, getting around arguments. What do you think about a licence or cyclists paying tax, Chris?
Well, what I think is it drives cyclists off the road because a lot of people couldn't afford the licence or the insurance and stuff, or the number plate. But I do think it's a good idea because... the motorist pays a phenomenal amount of money in car tax and petrol tax, etc., etc. And the cyclist, I mean, the whole bollard system and the lane system has been built for the cyclists. Why should the motorist pay for it?
I think they should be responsible for what they're doing.
Yeah.
And if that means paying a fine, then they've got to pay a fine.
Do you not find, Diana, that cyclists are a little irate? They're a bit feisty, aren't they? Why are cyclists so angry?
They are these days. They used not to be. On a cycle, you're having a lovely time.
Yeah, little baguette on the front basket.
Well, I do think they're vulnerable, though. To be fair to the cyclists, I do think the cyclist is vulnerable.
Yeah, maybe they're angry because they're afraid of getting run over by a 4x4. Diana Moran in a Lamborghini.
I don't have anything like that at all. I've got a 12-year-old car, so...
There you go. Well, I tell you what, you get what you pay for. Lots more to get through. In my take at 10, I'll be dealing with a brand new concept, the 15-minute city. It sounds like a dystopian nightmare. More on that after 10. But next up, the queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield, and she's got a royal exclusive.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Are cyclists now out of control? A flood of emails, mark at gbnews.uk for each and every one of them. I love getting your emails. This from Richie. Hi, Mark. The government won't do anything about cyclists. I'm a cyclist myself. Encouraging cycling is part of their sinister 15-minute cities plans, so bikes will just become more common. Well, Richie, that's the topic of my take at 10. In just 12 minutes' time. You won't want to miss it. Thank you, Richie. Bruce says, hi, Mark. Why on earth do we fund cycle lanes just for cyclists not to legally have to keep to them? There are plenty of open roads for them to use if they want to cycle restriction-free. Thank you, Bruce. And last but not least, from Sandra on the Grooming Gangs documentary. Excellent documentary, says Sandra, about grooming gangs. It needed to be said. Now make every politician watch it. Well done, Charlie, says Sandy. I'll absolutely echo that sentiment. Keep those emails coming, mark at gbnews.uk. It's time now for US News with the queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Hi, Kinsey.
Hi, you can call me David for the day. I saw that little beginning, and your improv skills are so incredible, Mark. I just love you.
You're too kind. I've been busking for years, but I haven't been found out just yet. Kinsey, great to see you. We need some sunshine on this dark February night. Let's talk about the royals. A possible peace deal between King Charles and his youngest son.
I mean, yes and no. We do anticipate that Harry and Meghan are going to be invited to the coronation. The Express, confirmed that over the weekend. But reality is, Mark, this had to be done. This was going to be a PR nightmare if King Charles did not invite Harry and Meghan to the coronation, a topic that you and I have debated for months. So we do anticipate that they're going to be invited. We anticipate that they're probably, they'll be seated with the York girls, Princesses Eugenie and Beatrice, because they get along really well with the girls. But the palace is planning for 3 separate scenarios. Harry and Meghan show up, only Harry shows up, or neither show up. They've asked the couple, they've asked everybody really to RSVP as quickly as possible, early April. So they are trying to plan so that King Charles is the focus of the coronation, however, admitting that they realize that Harry and Meghan would be a great distraction. Additionally, though, this is my favorite part of everything I've been reading about the coronation. A source close to the royal family says that Harry and Meghan should be prepared to talk to senior royals about nothing but the weather, which we can all understand. Those two can't keep their mouths shut. Loose lips sink ships.
Definitely right. What is your best guess? We won't hold you to this, but what is your best guess as to what will happen? Do we think it's Harry alone, perhaps?
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if it was Harry alone, but I also think that Meghan is savvy enough to realize that her value increases due to her proximity to the royal family. So, I mean, I think Meghan might suck it up and show up as well because she likes Hollywood. She likes, you know, getting large checks to talk to her friends on a podcast. She wants to keep that lifestyle.
They've caused a lot of trouble for King Charles and the family, but I personally would like to see both of them there because I think blood is thicker than water. What's your view?
I really would rather not see them there. I feel like they're so destructive, and I'm one of those people that if you hurt me and you hurt me bad, for self-preservation, I distance myself, and I wish that William and Catherine had that option. I wish that they had the freedom to do that. But your heart is in the right place.
Well, I try. Madonna, is her face in the right place?
You are so bad. I knew you were going to be all over this story. Our relationship with Madonna is wild. You know, I'm going to have to take one for the team here and say, I sympathize with her, Mark. I know that everybody's giving her a hard time. You know, she's been doing weird stuff to her face for a while, but it was her appearance at the Grammys that shut the internet down. People critiquing her cheeks and her face. And I think it's actually really hurt her feelings. She's called all of the chaos around this particular event misogynist. She said it was sexist, and she said this line, Mark: "I have never apologized for any of the creative choices I have made, nor of the way I look or dress, and I'm not going to start." It's hard to get old, Mark. I electrocuted my face for 30 minutes this morning. Have some sympathy.
You will never age. You're a timeless classic, like a Chanel suit. Now, can we ask you about Rihanna? For those that don't know, she's really one of the biggest singing stars in the world. She's beautiful. She's a multi-millionaire. But somebody in a very high position of power and influence is not a fan.
Yeah, can I just say I never want to get on Donald Trump's bad side? Yes, Donald Trump is going after Rihanna. Rihanna, who actually hasn't performed in like 7 years, is performing tomorrow at the Super Bowl. And I have to be careful about talking about it because I'll be there. So I don't want to be critical. And then there's like a shot of me on TV twerking to Umbrella. So I'm going to watch my words. But apparently in, I believe it was 2019, around 2020, Rihanna said and did a couple of really hateful things towards Trump. She told Vogue that he was mentally ill, and then she went to this cool Cadillac place in Texas and wrote F Trump on a Cadillac. And so Trump tweeted, irate that she's performing at the Super Bowl this weekend, that she had no talent and that she owed everything she had to her stylist, basically saying she looks great. That doesn't necessarily say she can sing. But, this is just the Hollywood elite giving us their opinion that we really don't want. I don't care who you vote for, and I like you better when I have no clue.
Definitely. Pretty ungentlemanly of Donald Trump, I would say, those remarks. What about Joe Biden, finally? He gave his State of the Union speech this week. What is the State of the Union speech? Why is it so important?
Well, I would just say I'm so embarrassed for my country. And if somebody doesn't know what the State of the Union is and they didn't see the speech, I would prefer that they stay in that lane, Mark, because I have never seen anything like this. It's where both parties are supposed to get together. Joe Biden is supposed to say, here's what we've accomplished and here's what's on the horizon. And we are supposed to unite and be excited about the future of our country. And unfortunately, it was clown town, Mark. We had Republicans sitting in the back screaming that he was a liar. Aside from Joe Biden fibbing numerous times and slipping and sliding all over his script. He can't read a teleprompter to save his life. It was just such a poor reflection of my country, and I apologize in advance. It was so embarrassing.
Well, listen, your contribution was quite the opposite. Thank you for joining us live, I think, from Phoenix in Arizona. I do hope you haven't gone there to retire.
No, I'm going to go to the Super Bowl, and I'm rooting for the Phillies. This is my Diana in her Philadelphia's Eagle Jacket t-shirt, so I am well prepared.
Come on, those Phillies. Enjoy the game, and we'll catch up in a week's time. The fabulous queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield, who's going to the Super Bowl. Did you know that crime actually drops when the Super Bowl is happening? It's like the FA Cup final times 100 in America. Lots more to come in the next hour. In my take at 10, I'll be dealing with the dystopian hell of 15-minute cities. You can only drive your car on certain roads, certain number of days of the year. Welcome to hell. That's my take at 10. Plus, we've got the papers 10 minutes earlier than everyone else at 10:20. Plus, in the news agenda with my panel, do you eat in bed? Is that wrong? And are you ever too old to party? Lots to get through, including those Sunday papers with reaction from the Daily Express's David Maddox. A cracking hour to come. Get the kettle on.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236, and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 10 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan tonight. In my take at 10 in just a moment, why council plans for 15-minute cities are more suited to North Korea than the United Kingdom. Plus, tomorrow's papers at the earlier time of 10:20 right through until 11 in the company of the Daily Express Online's political editor, David Maddox. In the news agenda with my panel, is it wrong to eat food in bed? Do you eat in bed? I think it's disgusting. And also, are you ever too old to party? Lots to get through, but first, the headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you very much. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. The Home Secretary has condemned what she described as the appalling disorder during protests outside a hotel housing migrants in Knowsley on Friday. Suella Braverman tweeted that the alleged behaviour of some asylum seekers is never an excuse for violence. This comes shortly after Merseyside police arrested 15 people aged between 13 and 54 following those violent protests. Security has been increased following the incident with reinforced fencing and a police presence. Now, the number of dead following Monday's earthquakes in southern Turkey and northern Syria has now passed 28,000. Rescuers have continued to find some survivors in the rubble, but they say the window for finding them is closing. The UN aid chief, Martin Griffiths, has warned that the death toll could double. Mr Griffiths says the UN will carry out separate aid appeals for Turkey and Syria in the coming days. Well, the Disasters Emergency Committee has raised more than £50 million of aid and support for victims in just 2 days. Rabina Saeed from frontline medical aid charity UK Med says more and more people are joining in the humanitarian efforts.
On the ground, we're going to be providing a full Type 1 hospital facility. So that is providing primary health care to those who need it. So that's dealing with initial kind of trauma incidents, but then also secondary illnesses and diseases, people that might have left their homes without their medicine, families and children. So providing that primary medical support.
One man has died and a second is still in hospital following a double stabbing in East London. Officers were called to Hackney Wick at 4:30 this morning when the victims, both in their 20s, arrived at hospital with knife wounds. A 26-year-old later died from his injuries. Forensic teams are searching the White Post Lane area where the incident took place. So far, no arrests have been made. Well, an arrest has been made following a protest at a drag queen storytelling event for children at London's Tate Britain. Police say the person in custody is suspected of making a racially aggravated comment towards a police officer. The protest broke out after demonstrators, described by some as far-right, clashed with others who'd gathered in support of the event. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Did you know that Tatiana used to be my producer? How the mighty have fallen. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. Big stories, big guests, and always big opinions. In the news agenda with my panel, is it wrong to eat food in bed? Do you do it? I think it's a filthy habit. And are you ever too old to party? We've got tomorrow's papers at 10:20 right through until 11. That's 10 minutes earlier than everyone else. With full reaction not just from my panel, but the political editor of the Daily Express Online, a brilliant journalist, David Maddox. Lots to get through, a busy, busy hour. Tomorrow's Sunday papers coming up, but first, my take at 10. What can you do in 15 minutes? Empty the washing machine and hang up your fresh laundry? Read a couple of chapters of your favourite book? Watch half an episode of How I Met Your Mother? Well, creepy local authority bureaucrats would like to see your entire existence boiled down to the duration of a quarter of an hour, with the arrival of so-called 15-minute cities. This dystopian plan will see roads in some of Britain's most iconic towns and cities being blocked off, with cars being restricted to certain areas, all overseen by number plate recognition cameras installed everywhere, with a surveillance culture that would make Pyongyang envious. In some places, your car would have an allowance to drive on certain streets for a fixed number of days in the year. Some roads out of bounds to all. Many consider this idea laudable. 15-minute cities make everything walkable. You can go by foot to grab a coffee, do your grocery shopping, have a pint. And if you don't fancy walking, everything you need is just a 5-minute bicycle ride away. Lovely. Fans of this scheme say it will deal with traffic and congestion and make life easier, more convenient and sustainable for locals. Except that, as the MP Nick Fletcher, who's raised a question about this in Parliament, points out, these low-traffic neighbourhoods are having an impact on small businesses, given the lack of passing trade they now receive. Take a listen.
Will the leader please set aside some time in this House for a debate on the international socialist concept of so-called 15-minute cities and 20-minute neighbourhoods? Ultra-low emission zones in their present form do untold economic damage to any city. However, the second step after these zones will take away personal freedoms as well. Sheffield is already on this journey, and I do not want Doncaster, which is also a Labour-run socialist council, to do the same. Low emission zones cost the taxpayer money, simple as. However, 15-minute cities will cost us our personal freedom, and that cannot be right.
Well, the minister who answered his question, Penny Mordaunt, did not disagree. So projects like ultra-low emission zones in central London and other British cities is arguably impacting enterprise and is most certainly curtailing our way of life. The Telegraph today report that a low-traffic neighbourhood scheme in Haringey in North London has blocked off certain residential streets with cameras or planters to stop motor traffic using the neighbourhood as a through route. The council defended its actions, saying it aims to make it safer and easier to walk, wheel, scoot, cycle and shop locally. 6 months on, however, and the paper reports that 3/4 of traders on one Haringey street in particular are thinking of leaving in the next 18 months, and 3 have already shut up shop. One of them is My Little Home Emporium, a once bustling vintage furniture shop that now stands shuttered and derelict with low-traffic neighbourhood planters blocking the road next to it. Now, some people characterise these 15-minute cities as an effective climate lockdown. Now, I think that's strong language and potentially misleading. I'm not sure that's what they are. Clean air looks to be a big motivating factor, and who doesn't want that? But it's clear that this policy, which local authorities argue will also help get carbon emissions down, is an unprecedented assault on how we go about living our lives, allowing the state to control your movements by car. It genuinely feels like a policy that would happen in mainland China, not Sheffield, Canterbury, Bristol, or that great seat of Western Enlightenment, Oxford. How shameful that any of this should happen in Britain, the home of liberal democracy, the home of free speech, the home of individual self-determination. People aren't stupid. Most people don't use cars unnecessarily. They get behind the wheel when they need to get somewhere, perhaps taking others with them, dropping the kids off to school, or a builder with colleagues in the back, or taking tools to a job. During the pandemic, when the likes of myself and others warned that we were setting a precedent, allowing the state to encroach so much on our lives, controlling our movements to stop COVID, we were labelled mad conspiracy theorists. Well, state overreach is, in my view, now the norm. And these 15-minute cities, low-traffic neighbourhoods and ULEZ zones are just another example. I'm sorry, but in a free country, you ought to be able to get in a car and drive wherever you like. But that freedom is starting to feel like a distant memory. These deeply illiberal, un-British 15-minute cities are beyond the pale. They're hurting communities, they're hurting small businesses, and they've got to go. It took me less than 15 minutes to realise they're a terrible idea. What's your view? Do you think perhaps the 15-minute city idea, the low-emission zones, are going to make for safer, more sustainable and more convenient cities. Mark at gbnews.uk, all opinions embraced. But let's get the views of my fantastic panel. Political commentator Tonya Buxton, journalist and model Diana Moran, and Olympian and broadcaster Chris Akabusi. Diana Moran, 15-minute neighbourhood. Yes or no for you?
Absolutely no. I think it's just awful what has happened to free choice, and especially for older people. How the devil are they going to get to the shops and back, or go and see their friends? And the footfall for the shops, it's a death knell, isn't it, for pubs, for shops? Terrible, terrible.
They would say, Diana, that they're going to reduce emissions, we'll have cleaner air, and perhaps public transport links would be better, and that would be good for pensioners.
Well, what we've been saying about public transport earlier in the programme, it doesn't bode well, does it?
That's a fair point. Chris Akabusi, 15-minute cities, are you in?
Oh, my gosh, it's awful, really. I mean, what happened to the idea of freedom? And what are we free for? And what are we free from? And it seems to me that we're back to the AI and automation business, and you will own nothing, you will be happy. And we're going to build back better. You will live in your home, you'll have your food and your supplies brought to you, you will consume your entertainment from home, and you'll be happy to have a 50-minute walk around your local park if you are lucky. I mean, it's just, I mean, look, I'm 64, 20 years' time, well, actually, no.
Excuse me, that's my age, 84.
Yeah, 20, 30 years' time, I shuffle off the mortal coil. But I do think the children, my children and my grandchildren, and I've got both, that are in existence. And what is this world that I'm passing on to them? And I am passing on to them because I see it happening and I do nothing about it. You know, I'm not bombarding Number 10. I'm not marching on the streets. I'm not saying no. I'm just watching and I'm seeing it. And I'm seeing it happen. And I see where we're going. And everything is converging. This is just another one we're talking about now. But it's exactly the same thing. Build back better, own nothing, be happy.
Tonya, the local authorities would also argue that these towns and cities cannot sustain any more traffic. They're gridlocked as it is.
Well, I completely disagree with that. We just need more organisation. I just don't agree with that. And they have to find ways to accommodate the way people want to live their lives. There's a couple of things I want to say. These consultations that they're allegedly having to ask the community, bear in mind that these councillors, these MPs, these people work for us. So when they consult with us, and everybody, it's like 80% of the people that went to these consultations did not want it and completely ignore it and do as they please. We are now starting to live in a dictatorship. But Chris, there is something you can do. You can join togetherdeclaration.org. That's togetherdeclaration.org. Go onto their websites, and they are setting up committees. They're sending letters to councillors. They're taking that helplessness out of our hands and making us be able to do something. Because I'm ready to march. I'm ready to fight for my rights, like I did during lockdown, because it was all a load of rubbish and we've all been proved right. We will again be proved right that this is dystopian and we do not want to live in a world like this.
Of course, Tonya, many would argue that the pandemic was not a bit of rubbish. Of course, I tend to concur with you, but many will point to those impacted by COVID during the pandemic. But I take your point.
Well, I agree. But can I just say, Mark, just to add that, and I know that we've got to give both sides of the argument. I was very much impacted by lockdown. My mother-in-law died because her GP wouldn't see her. Yeah. So yes, we were impacted greatly, but it wasn't for the reasons that a lot of people want to say it was.
Fair enough. Tonya, do you accept the political aspect of this as suggested by that MP? He called the idea socialist. Is there any evidence that this is a left versus right issue?
Yes, I think there is, because it seems to be all the Labour councils, like Haringey and all these Labour councils, that are making this happen. So it does look like it is that way. And the main thing is that they are consulting their local people. The local people that are living in these areas are standing up and saying they don't want this. And they are ignoring them and doing exactly as they please, like they would do in the communist era. So kind of looks that way.
What do you think, Diane? Do you think this is a left versus right issue?
Yes, I think I do. It's an insidious way of the left changing our way of life in the UK.
And what do you think, finally, Diana, about the idea of, in these low-traffic neighbourhoods, kids kicking a football around on the street, street parties, mums and dads chatting, on the pavement, not worried about getting run over by an HGV?
But, I mean, we shouldn't be dictated to about what we do, the way that we live our lives. I'm an older person and I know how important it is to get out, to meet people. You just bump into people, perhaps take the dog for a walk and say hello to somebody. If you're restricted to 10 minutes and then get back in your house, I think that's terrible. No quality of life.
No, well, my fantastic panel return at 10:30 for tomorrow's papers, and it's the Sunday papers, some massive stories coming up. We'll get reaction from Diana Moran, from Chris Akabusi and from Tonya Buxton. But next up, a sneak preview of two of tomorrow's front pages in the company of the political editor of the Express Online, one of my favourite journalists, a good friend of mine, David Maddox. He's next.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one.
Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamon Holmes, back on the TV
Surprised
with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind, and we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
and right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, a big reaction to my take at 10, and you're not having the 15-minute cities where you get an allowance of driving your car for a certain number of days of the year, lots of roads blocked off. This from, let's have a look who we've got here, so many emails, lots of emails on cycling, lots of emails on the 15-minute city. Norma, good evening, Norma. How are you? Goodbye, Norma Jean. Norma says, Mark, I don't want to walk. I can't walk. I hate bikes and public transport is awful. We need CO2 to live. Public transport has never been good. In the 60s, I, at 15 years, had to walk a mile to catch a bus to get to work. I was young then. Well, I'm sure you're still a youngster at heart now, Norma. Thank you for your email. Do email me again, mark@gbnews.uk. Kathy, how are you, Kathy? All the ladies tonight. Kathy says, hi, Mark, this is tyrannical. Who on this planet has the right to tell anyone where they can go and how they can get there? What about people that are disabled or have poor mobility? Also, what about supermarkets? Not everyone has one within 15 minutes. And even if they do, what about those that do weekly shops? Can they carry all of that back? Also, emergency services is a great point from Kathy. How can they get through barriers, planters or bollards? Well, I think, I'll be honest with you, Kathy, I think it's all a load of bollards. Last but not least, Colin. Hi, Mark. Do you know of any bus or train route that goes from start to finish in 15 minutes? How stupid is this idea? Can you please move my job and everyone else's to be only 15 minutes away? Colin, what a great idea. Thank you for that. Keep those emails coming. Best bit of the show is when you get in touch. It's time now for a first sneak peek at tomorrow's Sunday papers. I shall bring you all of the papers at exactly 10:30 sharp, but let's have a look now at the Sunday Express. They lead with, James Bulger, killer, must die in prison, says brother. James Bulger's brother has urged Justice Secretary Dominic Raab to stay true to his plans to keep killer John Venables in jail for life. On the 30th anniversary of the murder of 2-year-old James today, Michael Fergus insisted he will never forgive Venables and accomplice Robert Thompson for the heinous attack on his sibling. That's a very important story. I'll discuss that with the political editor online of The Express in just a moment. We've also got The Independent, hot off the press. BBC boss in cash for Boris row, guilty of hiding his role, says inquiry. Richard Sharp's reputation was severely damaged tonight after a damning report by MPs on his role in the cash for Boris row. Mr Sharp's hopes of surviving the scandal appeared doomed after an all-party Commons committee branded him guilty of significant errors of judgment by failing to declare his role in facilitating an £800,000 loan for Boris Johnson. Also, an important couple of headlines at the top of The Independent. Top actor Hugh Bonneville on cancel culture. Where does it stop? Nice to hear a Lovey speaking common sense and calling out cancel culture. I actually met Hugh Bonneville once, really nice guy. We had a bit of a drink. What a lad. Also, The Independent. Very important story, photo story on the front page of the Indy. 15 arrested in violent riot at Merseyside Asylum Hotel. Let's go now straight over to the political editor of The Express Online, David Maddox. And David, you've just put the paper to bed. An important headline, James Bulger, 30 years on.
Yes, this is a really kind of sort of sad story. I mean, all of us who remember that terrible crime, it kind of stuck with us for all our lives. I think it had so many implications to it, and it was really so shocking that the story is an interview with the brother of James, and really calling for at least one of the killers, John Venables, to be in prison for the rest of his life, and an appeal to Dominic Raab. I think in a week where the kind of how we treat people who commit heinous crimes with the whole Lee Anderson thing, and of course, obviously, Venables and Thompson were children, so wouldn't have been subject to the death penalty. But one of the issues with getting rid of the death penalty in this country was that murderers and people who've committed the most terrible crimes would spend the rest of their lives in jail. And, you can understand the feelings of James Bulger's brother.
Absolutely. David, important journalism from tomorrow's Sunday Express. The Independent, 15 arrested in violent riot at Merseyside Asylum Hotel. We don't know a lot of the details, and clearly this is an unedifying sight. It's an unwelcome thing that should happen in this country, this attack, this violence. However, the government and the opposition and the media would ignore tensions around the migrant crisis at their peril.
I completely agree, and I think I have to say that the mishandling of the migrant crisis is leading to this sort of thing. There's no excuse for that sort of behaviour, and I think that needs to be made very clear. And the idiots who go out and do this sort of thing only undermine those of us who are trying to make the case that we need to control our borders and things like that. And I hope that the full weight of the law is brought down on these morons, frankly. But we know from different sectors, different things, that when governments ignore and turn a blind eye and just allow problems to continue uncontrolled, then extremism gets a foot in, and this is what's happening. It was inevitable. I'm afraid that we're going to see more of this. We've seen it in Kent as well already, with an attack on the asylum centre down there. We've got to get a control of this situation for the good of this country, but also for the good of law and order, because when people think the law is not on their side and the government's not on their side, they take the law into their own hands.
Indeed. For the finest political coverage, head over to The Express Online. Their political editor is David Maddox. David, always a treat to have you on the show. Catch up soon.
Thanks, Mark.
There you go. That's an important story that we'll return to. James Bolger, 30 years on. Killer must die in prison, says brother. Lots more headlines to come. All of tomorrow's papers. It is the Sunday papers. We've got lots of stories and some great panellists with which to digest them. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go. But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank. My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
It's that time, tomorrow's papers. Director Sebastian, very much on it. He must have had coffee or something. Look at that. Trigger fingers. He's like the pinball wizard. It is time for tomorrow's papers. And let us start with the Sunday Times. And they lead with Tavistock scandal is on a par with East Germany's doping of athletes. More than 1,000 children were referred for puberty blockers at an experimental gender clinic where concerns were ignored to preserve a gold dust NHS contract. Former clinicians at the Gender Identity Development Service, part of the Tavistock and Portman NHS Trust in London, have detailed how some incredibly complex children were placed on medication after just one face-to-face assessment, despite many having a variety of mental health or family background problems. I can just sense Tonya bubbling with fury at that one, so we'll get her views in just a moment. Chairman has undermined trust in the BBC. Richard Sharp's involvement in Boris Johnson loan was a serious error of judgment, say MPs. And also shamed MP in financial misconduct claims. The shamed MP submitted a forged document whilst applying for a mortgage, used a frontman to conceal his financial interests and failed to declare a £25,000 campaign donation. David Warburton, the MP for Somerton and Frome, had the Conservative whip removed last year after he was pictured beside an upturned baking tray with 4 lines of cocaine, which he alleges allegedly inhaled line after line. Shocking story and strong allegations there. The Sunday Mirror now. TV star's ex-shock confession. I did cheat on Vanessa again and again. Vanessa Feltz's ex has revealed the secret affair, sex texts and flirting that killed their perfect romance. Singer Ben Afwedu, who, let me hasten to add, is a good friend of this show and a regular panellist, tells for the first time how he had sex 3 times with a woman he met in Ibiza. TV's Vanessa forgave him, but Ben messaged a fan on Instagram and flirted with a woman at a Butlins gig. I think that's where he went wrong. Moving swiftly on. The Sunday People now. Cost of living crisis. GP won't see you now. It's too cold. Hundreds of surgeries cut hours as they can't afford heating bills. We'll be debating the NHS tomorrow as part of my big opinion monologue. The Sunday Express. James Bulger killer must die in prison, says brother. This on the 30th anniversary of the tragic murder of James Bulger. The Independent, 15 arrested in violent riot at Merseyside Asylum Hotel, and BBC boss in cash for Boris Rao, guilty of hiding his role, says inquiry. And last but not least, nudists, say the Daily Star Sunday, put on clothes as the heating bills rocket. The fuel Monty. You can leave your socks on. Those who dare to bear have been forced to stop stripping off in their homes because they can't afford sky-high fuel bills. Some are even leaving their hats on. Excellent work. That is the headline of the day, the Fuel Monty. Well done to Isabel Dickinson at the Daily Star Sunday. Diana, isn't the Daily Star a tonic in these dark times?
Well, very much so, with headlines like that. Absolutely glorious.
In fact, let's start with a funny, because we need cheering up. The nudists, they are having a tough time. It's been a very cold February so far, hasn't it?
Sorts out the sheep from the goat.
Yeah, I've developed a really bad habit of wearing my coat indoors.
Oh, no.
Which gives Mrs. Dolan the impression I'm on my way out.
Yes, exactly.
Which, I'll be honest, is a mixed blessing.
Oh.
Have you found... Are you guys wrapping up indoors at the moment?
Yeah, I just say get another jumper, put another cardigan on, put socks on.
Another layer.
Just get on with it.
And for you, Chris, another of your man from Milk Tray roll neck jumpers?
I've just got an Avengers heating bill.
Have you really?
Oh dear.
It's not PC to say, but yeah.
No, it is. It is a shocker, and it doesn't look like it's going to go down anytime soon.
But if you shut a few doors around the house, that keeps the place a lot warmer.
But it's just absolutely horrendous, the bill. And you've got a choice, you know, you do your dough that way, or you freeze, and I'm not very good at freezing.
Well, if you can go that way, you can afford to pay it.
Oh, I'm not Rockefeller, but...
if you would like to send Chris Akabusi a pair of knitted socks and a woolly hat...
Then I'll turn off my heating. No, I won't. No, I won't.
Just write GB News London, it will get to us. I might try them on first. Let's have a look at this story in The Independent, if I can, Chris. 15 arrested in violent riot at Merseyside Asylum Hotel. Shocking behaviour. We don't want to see this in this country. At the same time, the media and the political class cannot ignore genuine public anger about our current border situation.
Yeah, look, it is shocking, and it's been well said already, you know, that you can't condone it, whatever the scenario. We do know we've got a challenge with the boat crisis, but I am also worried about our reporting, and when you start using terms like invasion, you've got to be very careful with language, because when you use your language, certain people, erudite, can talk, take it for the courts, etc. But another group of people just can only use what they've got at their disposal. And if they vent their anger and their dismay, that is exactly what they're doing. So I'm not condoning it, but I do understand how a certain section of our community who don't think they're being heard, who feel, who are listening to the rhetoric, are expressing themselves in this way. It's not right. It's been well said, but I can understand how it happens.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, Chris, they're hinting that politicians shouldn't use incendiary language, that perhaps inflames the situation. So the question is, you know, have people been triggered here? Have they been sort of brainwashed and manipulated? Or is their anger genuine and authentic or even understandable?
Their anger is genuine and authentic, and they don't have an outlet. I don't agree with violence in any way, manner or form at all. But we're not being listened to. We have a problem in this country. You know, we haven't got enough houses for the kind of people that live in Britain. I know cases again and again of people living in disgusting houses, and that we've got illegal migrants coming over and put in hotels and maybe behaving in a way that's not culturally suited to the way that we behave in Britain, and it's causing a lot of anger and a lot of upset, and no one's doing anything about it. So it's a pressure valve, isn't it?
It is. The comedian Leo Kearse of this parish said that maybe people that enter the country illegally should live where the Guardian journalists live.
Oh, wouldn't that be Islington?
It's
here
a win-win.
They come.
Leafy North London suburb. Yeah. Because it's communities that are impacted perhaps by an influx.
If you're a small community and you've suddenly got a load of illegal migrants coming into your community and behaving in a way that they're not aware of how we culturally live, their behaviour is not in line with the way that we want to live, it can be very, very frightening for that community. And, you know, once the fear sets in, then the anger sets in, and then terrible things like this happen.
Diana Moran, a complex issue, but the media and politicians must listen to the whole population.
Yes, it's a very complex business. One has genuine compassion for people who have left another country for, you know, dreadful reasons. But equally, those people living in our country who then observe those immigrants having food, accommodation, warmth, even in this time when we're all paying extra money, it must make a lot of people very, very angry. I'm not quite sure what the answer is.
One of the I was just thinking.
I would suggest the answer is partly what we're doing now, which is to talk about it and not to gaslight. I mean, clearly these crimes are appalling.
Oh, that's
and we
just
don't
dreadful.
condone what's happened and the violence.
No.
To have a national conversation,
I was thinking,
because all that does is, doesn't it? Otherwise, play into the hands of extremists, Chris.
I was thinking, like a halfway house. Okay, so we are billeting them in hotels, but some sort of disused liners. I mean, there's 2,000 immigrants apparently have come into the country this year. If they were put into the middle of the English Ocean on a disused liner, and that was kitted out to house them over the year or two,
While they're
three...
being processed.
While they're being processed, yeah. So the 2-3 years, rather than talk about Rwanda, OK, sit in the Irish Ocean, sit in the English Channel, sit in the North Sea, you're stuck there with your group of people who are all fleeing persecution, apparently. OK, sit there. You haven't got your passport. You found out a way. Don't worry. Sit there. We'll process you in the middle of the ocean. And...
I mean, it just seems to be logical to me to do something like that. I don't understand why something like that hasn't been done. Use the British Navy to do that a little bit more and to kind of police it as well.
Yeah.
And just process people. And the first step should be that people with criminal records that we've seen immediately get deported back to their countries without this 2-year period.
Yeah.
We've got to speed up the whole process.
And the point is that if we don't, as I just mentioned to Chris, if we don't acknowledge public anger, or if those who are angry or feel affected are either ignored, gaslit, or labelled as being, I don't know, right-wing extremists or far-right or something like that, you're only going to send those people into the arms of extremists, aren't you?
I don't know if that's going to be the case. You send them into it, but you make them do extreme things like this that are unnecessary. That's the main thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And whatever, for me now, it just seems to me that if you have a sensible thought in your head, that means you're a far-right extremist. If you don't agree with the sexualisation of children, you're a far-right extremist. If we don't agree with, you know, people who are coming from other countries illegally and not really, we know many of them are not persecuted. It's just economic migrants and they just want to
in the
come
summer,
over.
40% were Albanians in July.
Yes,
according to statistics from the Mail on Sunday. Albania hasn't had conflict in 25 years. It's safer than the Isle of Wight.
Exactly. Yeah. And what makes us so cross is that these people are getting medical help as and when they require it, whereas the good people of the UK try and get to a doctor and try and get your medical attention.
Yeah, I think on the other side, so I do think you've got to be pretty desperate, though, to jump into a dinghy and cross the channel. So, you know, on the other side, there are some people...
Pretty desperate, but yet you leave your mother, your wife, your children, all the people that real harm could come to. You leave them because, let's be honest, the boats are mainly full of young men.
Because you
can't be that.
Well, no, you are desperate.
Otherwise, you take.
Well,
listen, you're a father. You'd leave your children, would you? You'd leave your wife, would you?
Let me answer. Yeah, I would if I felt that I had a chance at a land that was where I could actually make something of myself and send money back to my family. Yeah, I would do. I mean, my parents come from Nigeria. I've seen some talented people in Nigeria who've gone to waste because the infrastructure's not there for them. So yeah, I would, and I would see that as a gallant thing for me to do, to put my life at risk to try to make life better for you. So I could see me doing something like that if I felt I could make it, and I would, you know, go through, you know, the hero's journey.
So the whole world, we open our doors to the whole world. The whole world just come and make it here. You've
no,
got
you
to
just
be
me.
reasonable on these things.
I agree with you.
There's just not enough room to do that.
No, I agree with you.
I'm an immigrant's daughter, so I completely get where you're coming
and I'm
from.
a immigrant son.
And my parents came over from Cyprus with nothing and made a life for themselves. So I understand why people want to do that.
Okay.
But bear in mind that Cyprus was under British colony and they raped us of all our copper and lots of our resources, so they owed me and my family. It's slightly different. But we can't have completely open borders for all of these
but some of them
often young people, often who have cultural differences to what we have, without some kind of stopgap. We need to allow we need more immigrants in this country. We need more people to work. We absolutely do that. We just need to have a faster turnover process so the right people are in and the wrong people are sent back.
I agree.
Yeah, and the reason why we've got such a pile-up is because we've got a criminal gang organisation, a global network, Diana, who are sending people across the channel, sometimes 1,000 a day.
It's a business.
Yeah.
a lot of people making a great deal of money out of it. And here are we in the UK. We are a tiny little island when you think about it, and we're just inundated with our own population, and now these other people coming in and wanting all of our resources as well.
Fascinating debate, which will no doubt rage on. We've got many stories from the papers next, some big headlines, and also some fun along the way. Is it wrong to eat in bed? Do you eat in bed? Plus, are you ever too old to party? We're not. See you in
No.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind, and we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Finger at communities.
Well, it's Mark Dolan tonight, and we've got tomorrow's papers tonight in the company of Tonya Buxton, Chris Akabusi, and Diana Moran. What a dream team panel, I'm sure you will agree. Lots of stories to get through. I do like this one in particular. Nearly half of Brits think it's OK to eat food in bed, including toast and biscuits. A poll suggests that 54%, that's right, over half of adults would ban any meals or snacks from the bedroom, with curry and roast dinners topping the list of forbidden foods. Many people may love to fine dine or are happy to eat on the sofa in front of the telly, but some love to eat in bed. So, is this a good thing or a bad thing, Diana?
It's a terrible thing.
Have you ever done it?
Never. Unless, of course, I was unwell.
OK.
But that's...
What about breakfast in bed on your birthday?
Well, I haven't got anybody to bring me breakfast on my birthday.
Right, when's your birthday? I'll be round.
I'll talk to the cat.
By the way, if it's warmed up, if you've got the heating on, I'll be in the nude.
I prefer you to keep your socks on.
That's it. Socks and a bobble hat.
I love it.
But you think... I mean, look, you're a fitness and health guru, and you believe in a good diet and everything. So I guess it's also, lifestyle-wise, it's not a good message, is it, that lying in bed watching telly, eating food?
Not at all. I like my food. I'm very conscious about the sort of food that I eat. Nothing expensive, but good. I mean, fresh and good. And I like to sit at a table and eat it on my own or with other people.
Yeah. Chris, eating in bed?
No, it's disgusting. I mean, a glass of champagne. I don't mind a glass of champagne.
Ah, yes.
Now you're talking.
Yeah,
so fluids are all right.
Especially if you're with your lady, or whatever love is, but, especially if you're with your lover.
Already with the fluids.
Yeah. So a glass of champagne is like... But no, I mean, it's disgusting, really. I mean, just imagine the mould and the debris that is in your bed. Disgusting.
Well, of course, I don't know if you've ever seen Tonya 9.5 weeks.
I've seen that, and it's really interesting, but I'm going to be more controversial than you are. I don't think that the bedroom... There are two things that you should do in the bedroom. I don't believe in televisions in bedrooms.
I'm with you.
There are two things that happen in bedrooms.
Correct.
You sleep and you have sex. That's all you do.
Oh, yeah!
That's it.
Way to go, Tonya, baby. Way to go.
Let me tell you, I'm halfway there.
He's going to you.
What time's your alarm clock?
Soon I'll sleep. So that's it. You think it's got to be a haven for rest and passion? And
Yes, that's it.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Really? What about a radio? Can we have wireless? Can we have GB News radio on DAB+?
You can have that in the mornings.
OK, so radio goes on in the morning. What's the problem with the telly in bed? Isn't that quite romantic, cuddle up to a rom-com with your loved one?
No, I think it's really wrong. I think it interferes with... People then get into bed, they don't speak to each other, they don't cuddle each other, they just kind of focus on this screen, or they bring their laptops to bed. And it loses the point of going to bed. You go to sleep or you go to sleep.
Have you never eaten in the bed, though, any of you?
Never.
Only when I've been unwell.
Right.
I've had chewing gum.
Yeah.
Oh, no, God, you could choke on that.
I don't. But I take it when I go to bed. But I've taken it in my bedroom. I've been chewing the gum.
Can I just say, like lovely Diana, I've only eaten in bed when I've been unwell. Am I allowed to call being drunk unwell?
No.
When I've been tired and emotional.
No.
With chicken McNuggets and a barbecue sauce.
Oh, no, that's awful.
And in the morning, in the morning, you wake up and you have the rest of it.
Well, you do, yeah.
It's sitting on the radiator, and you eat the best of the pizza.
Yeah.
Well, you don't really eat.
No, I haven't. The funny thing is, in the dead of night, and you reach for another one, and then your partner says, "That's not a nugget."
Oh! He went there. That is very naughty.
I won't be dipping that one, let me tell you. Now, let's talk about Duncan Bannatyne, good friend of mine, Dragon's Den star, businessman. Celebrated his 74th birthday. Happy birthday, Duncan. His wife, Nigora, shared videos online of his wild yacht party surrounded by bikini-clad dancers and her model pals. Look at him, enjoying every minute. Are you ever too old to party?
Never, never, never. Age is mind over matter, and if you don't mind, it doesn't matter.
The thing is, do you find, as you've got older, that you've been invited to fewer things, though? So is there ageism on the guest list?
No.
Do you get plenty of invites?
Plenty.
Yeah, glad to hear it. Chicken McNuggets?
Lots of fun.
Yeah. And that's it. And does an older person bring something different to a party, do you think?
Not at all. I was at a party last night, somebody else's 80th birthday last night.
Nice.
It was huge fun. Everybody laughing, talking, huge
And
fun.
what does Diana Moran, the Green Goddess, health guru, fitness expert, what does Diana Moran bring to an 80th party?
Hopefully a lot of humour.
But do you bring a bottle as well?
Oh, gosh, I see what you mean. Oh, yes.
Is that allowed? Is that allowed in a health regime? A couple of glasses of vino?
Definitely. Helps you relax.
But here's the flip side, though, Chris. As we get older, are we less keen on parties? Because I go to fewer than I used to.
I'm not a party guy. No, I'm not.
I bet you were back in the day.
I've had my fair share of parties, and when I was a young man, little blues and things. But
goodness.
No, it's not. I mean, define party. Define party. If it's my mate's 60th birthday, yeah, I'll go to his 60th birthday. But I'm not. I'm not. Oh, it's Friday night. It's 10 o'clock. Let's start getting ready to go out. and fling myself at a party at midnight and then...
Oh, you don't have to fling yourself at a party at midnight. You can start a party at 7, 8 and go home at midnight.
That's hors d'oeuvres. That's hors d'oeuvres. That's not a party then. That's hors d'oeuvres.
It is.
You don't get started till midnight.
Yeah, it's midnight. It's not a party. He's walking late hours, you know.
No carriages for...
Yeah, absolutely.
For Chris.
But I don't do it. It's not
You don't bother anymore. What do you think?
I think that it's like you said, it's entirely up to you, and it's also down to you. So, you know, you say you get a lot less invitations to parties. If you've turned into kind of an old fart...
Not me.
Then you're not... then you're not going to get invited. But if you have the youthful joy that Diana obviously has, and I love to dance. I love to party. Recently,
so
I mean, I'm the
I.
first up dancing. I normally get the kids up dancing. And talking about midnight, forget it. I'm going to Greece at the weekend. The party doesn't start till 2 in the morning.
Well, there you go. That's a party.
Yeah. Whip out a bottle of ouzo and go for it. Well, I think I know what you mean about the parties. I like a sit-down. I like a bit of a dinner party. That's the thing.
Yeah, I like that.
That's quite nice, especially if Tonya's cooking. Can I thank my amazing panel? We loved having all of you, the wonderful Tonya, Chris and Diana. Please come back soon. Really enjoyed tonight's show. Thank you to my team. You've all worked very hard this weekend. And, of course, we've saved our best till last because Mark Dolan tonight returns tomorrow, 9 o'clock, right through until 11. My big opinion monologue, I'll be dealing with the NHS and a shocking story that you will not believe. Plus, Anne Widdecombe and all your Sunday favourites. Next up, it's Headliners. See you tomorrow at 9.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, at 9:30 on Sunday morning when I'll be speaking to Sir Simon Mayle, former Deputy Chief of Defence Staff, about President Zelensky's demand for British fighter jets. I'll also be asking Tory MP Tobias Ellwood, Chair of the Defence Select Committee, whether the UK is spending enough on defence. All that and more at 9:30 tomorrow.
Me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening.